Sailing the world with ITV, the Whitbred Round the World race for the Heineken Trophy.
Hello and welcome along to Sail the World. We're on board the good ship John Lang in Poole Harbour in Dorset, along with an eager and able crew from the Ocean Youth Club. They're Europe's largest sail training organisation for youngsters. Find out more about them later in the show.
Well, it was a slow and tedious start to leg 5 of the Whitbred Round the World race from Punta del Este, Uruguay to Fort Lauderdale. But it wasn't long before drama started to happen.
Disaster for Chris Dixon's Tokyo. The overall leader in the Whitbred 60s by a large margin breaks her mast. Britain's Laurie Smith is set to cash in on Dixon's misfortune. It's Laurie's big chance to take the race by the scruff of the neck. But there are more headaches for the luckless crew of Dolphin and Youth. They've suffered serious damage yet again and have pulled into Brazil. The leg had started with no hint of the turmoil to come. New Zealand Endeavour leading the way out of Punta del Este. The Maxis were benefiting from the light airs, with La Poste following merits round the first mark. Chris Dixon's Tokyo headed the 60s. Grant Dalton and New Zealand Endeavour, who are determined to win the race outright, continued as the early pacemaker. But the fleet was tightly bunched and the slow slog continued up the South American coast, Tokyo eventually starting to emerge at the front. Meanwhile, the 3 maxi ketches were having their own close battle.
We're sailing in a very confused, lumpy sea of about 8 to 10 knots of air. And here we've got the fleet close by. We've got Merritt just through here. Struggling to pass her at the moment, but we're going pretty nicely. La Poste about a mile on the leeward bow.
Laurie Smith and Interim Justicia, sluggish off the start line in Punta, were now in better shape. They have plenty to do to wipe out Dixon's overall lead of 14 hours. Seeing their great rival on the horizon certainly kept the adrenaline pumping. Winston are keen to make up for earlier disappointments. Co-skipper Brad Butterworth gambled on going further offshore to try and steal a march.
We're the most easterly boat of the leading bunch. Paid a little price to get out here last night, but hopefully we'll be able to hold outside everybody up to until we get into the trades, and that's our plan, to be east of the bunch. And so we're now on the wind in 13 knots. Every day it's getting warmer. So normal fifth leg sailing conditions.
The north to northeasterly winds blowing down the Brazilian coast were of variable strength, often gentle but sometimes gusting to over 25 knots. For a stage which normally offers light relief after the rigours of the Southern Ocean, it was proving to be an uncomfortable ride.
We were told that leg 5 was going to be nice and warm and sunny, dry. It's now day 3. We've been on the wind since the start. The wind's now about 25 knots. We're all soaking wet. We've only got one t-shirt each. Got one pair of shorts each. And some fairly thin oilies, and we're not really enjoying ourselves. It reminds me a bit of the Southern Ocean. It's a little bit warmer, but just as wet, just as rough.
If they thought that was bad, worse was to come for Matthew Humphreys and his young crew. They've had to constantly roll with the punches. Day 5 saw Laurie and Intrum emerge on top after an intense contest at the front of the fleet with Tokyo and Yamaha. Slow going, but nail-biting stuff. Later that day, Dolphin's luck, what little they have, again ran out. They suffered serious delamination damage to the bow, crashing down off a wave. The inner skin of the hull was badly cracked, and the decision was reluctantly taken to head for port. Dolphin eventually limped into Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. A specialist boat builder has flown out from Britain, and Humphreys reckons Dolphin could be back in the race inside 4 days. It's the third major equipment failure, following the broken rudder on leg 2, which forced repairs in the Kerguelen Islands. And the damaged keel on leg 4, when 2 bolts sheared off. But Humphreys and the lads are nothing if not gutsy. We're becoming used to Dolphin's problems, but no one was prepared for Tokyo's disaster 3 hours later. Dixon was left helpless after the mast snapped at the lower spreaders while beating into 25 knots of wind. There were no injuries, but Dixon can kiss goodbye to the Heineken Trophy. Tokyo is heading slowly for Brazil, and a new mast will be on its way. Laurie Smith and his European team, winners of legs 2 and 4, must now be the favourites for overall victory in the Whitbred 60 class.
Well, for Chris Dixon and Tokyo, the favourite Whitbred 60, the first real problems of the race, and Dolphin and Youth experiencing yet more bad luck. Tracy Edwards, I should think Chris Dixon is frothing at the mouth. He must be so angry. Is this goodbye to Tokyo?
Well, I should think he's absolutely furious, because he did say at the beginning of this leg that they were going to sail a conservative leg, you know, just to keep the hours and not necessarily take any more out of Intrum. But I would imagine they must have made a mistake of some sort, because they don't have that much wind, I don't think. But as it's broken at the lower spreader, that's also huge problems for them, because it's very difficult to put up a jury rig, although they should be able to do that and get into port, but they're going to lose a lot of hours.
Well, Laurie Smith's prayers must have been answered. Good for Laurie Smith, good for Britain, because this really does open the race up now.
It does, yes. We were saying all along that probably the only thing that could help Laurie Smith take away the 14-hour lead would be for something to happen to Tokyo. And as something hasn't happened really for them the whole way round, you know, they haven't had any mishaps at all. It was quite likely that something would happen on this leg, as everyone else has changed gear, but they haven't. But this is very good news for Laurie, and hopefully now he'll be able to build up an unbeatable lead on the others.
Well, Tokyo's had a trouble-free race up till now, but the same can't be said for Dolphin and Youth. They've had trouble with the rudder, the keel, now they've got delamination, Tracy. What exactly does that mean?
Well, boats now, when they're built, are built of a laminate, which is 2 different materials. Moulded together with a resin and then literally baked in an oven. And what happens when they delaminate is that the layers peel back and so open up a hole in the hull.
How serious is it?
If it's extensive delamination, it can be very, very serious, and it really can sort of start to let water into the boat. Hopefully, if they get to port while they just sort of know it's starting, they'll be able to sort it out.
Now, Matt Humphreys, the skipper, has always said this Whitbred is a learning curve for all the young sailors on board. It's been a tough grounding for them, hasn't it?
It has, yes, but very good lessons, because while they're doing the next Whitbred, other people will be sailing Whitbred 60s for the first time. They'll be learning all these things, and Matthew and his crew will know everything there is to know about the Whitbred 60s. They'll know everything that there is to go wrong, and this will stand them in really good stead, you know, and this is what makes winners.
A big feature of this race has been the success of the Whitbred 60s. It's the first time they've been seen in the event, and their speed and performance have delighted the crews. Organisers are so impressed they've made the next race 60s only, so it's goodbye to the Maxis. Sally Simmons reports.
In the next race, Whitbred 60s will rule the world. They're fast, exciting, but more important, they're affordable.
The concept for the boat was that it was a fast, safe ocean racing yacht, and it's proved that it works. And it will be nice to get rid of any confusion there is, just have one class, and certainly speaking on behalf of everybody who's sailed them, they're fantastic boats to sail.
They've proved that they're exciting boats and they can attract, you know, very good yachtsmen, very good campaigns, good sponsors. I think the race in 1997 will be an excellent race.
At twice the price of the Whitbred 60s, Maxis are no longer viable.
The Maxis were great in their day. It's not their day anymore, and one design racing is where the whole world is going to, so go for it.
These outdated vessels then become a costly and cumbersome burden to their owners. Fortuna, which retired a week after the start, has sat for 6 months at Hamble Yacht Services at a cost of over £100 a week. The £6 million investment is unsellable.
It's a bit like racing cars. I mean, racing cars, when they become redundant, get put in a garage and the engine gets stripped down and sold on to somebody down the line, and I don't know what happens to the bodywork, but it's only this big. A Maxi's 80, 85 foot. And the trouble with them is that they're not easily convertible into cruising boats. You know, you need a crew of at least 10, 15 on most of the Maxis to sail safely. And that is a big problem.
One of the richest Maxis from 4 years ago, Rothmans, sat in the yard in Hamble for 3.5 years before she was finally sold to a Swedish man. And already the fax there is churning out requests from this year's skippers who need somewhere to park their boats, for the summer and possibly longer. Grant Dalton knows what the future holds for his Maxi, New Zealand Endeavour.
Nothing. There's nothing you can do with them. But a second-hand 60 is not a lot different because the course will change, the boats become obsolete. So we've got just about as much chance of selling a second-hand Maxi for some, I don't know, Bermuda racing or some other type of racing than you have of selling a second-hand 60. None of them are very easy to sell.
One careful owner, never been thrashed, low mileage, bargain to the highest bidder.
Still to come on Sail the World, we go back in time to the pioneering days of the very first Whitbred. Believe me, it's a fascinating contrast. Stay with us. Welcome back to Sail the World from Poole in Dorset. We're on the John Lang, a 72-foot ketch belonging to the Ocean Youth Club. More on their activities a little later. Next, though, we turn our attention to the very first Whitbred back in 1973 when it was pure adventure. Quite a contrast to the event today. Portsmouth, England, September 1973. 18 boats from 7 countries begin the first Whitbred round the world race. Following closely the route sailed by the clipper ships, the first Whitbred took the fleet to Cape Town, then across the Southern Ocean to Sydney, Australia. Back into the Southern Ocean again, around Cape Horn to Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, before the final leg home to Portsmouth, 27,000 miles. Hot favourite to win was the 73-foot aluminium ketch Pondweek Cease, sporting a keel made of high-density spent uranium. But the high hopes of skipper Eric Taballet, the greatest name in French yachting, were soon dashed. 2.5 weeks into the race, and Pondweek's main mast came crashing down. The boat diverted to Rio, where a special replacement was flown out from France. However, it would snap again during the third leg, forcing Taballet to retire. Peter Blake in a relaxed and playful mood aboard Burton Cutter. Such antics on deck became less commonplace as each Whitbred raised the level and intensity of competition. But this first race was more of an adventure, a voyage of discovery for the mainly amateur fleet. Blake's experience on the ill-prepared Burton Cutter coloured his approach to future campaigns.
The 10-minute gun before the start of the race, pulled the sails up, and we still had carpenters on the deck with their big planes playing off the teak deck planking. The decks were covered in shavings. We had drums of rope in the cockpit because we hadn't been sailing properly. You know, what sized sheet, what size rope do we need for this particular sail? Oh, that one looks about right. Haul off the length that seems about right, put a bit of tape on it, chop it with a knife, and away we went. You know, and there were no seats in the cockpit. They were made up of 76 or 78 cases of beer. And one of the toilets that we found after a week, the plumber, in his haste, had forgotten to connect to the hull fitting, so it was being used and was just discharging amongst the food, which by this time had been put into the bilge, you know. And so it went on. One of the guys used to sleep in his bunk with a black umbrella up because the decks leaked so much. But we had a great time. It really was a very good learning curve.
Despite the problems and later colliding with a Japanese fishing boat which had come alongside to invite the crew to lunch, Burton Cutter was first into Cape Town. The 80-foot ketch, the largest in the fleet, had taken 6 weeks. The next leg was a journey into the unknown, a wilderness only a few yachtsmen had experienced. On Great Britain too, Che Blythe put a disappointing first leg behind him and was serenaded out of Cape Town by one of his paratroopers.
Aboard the Ketch GB, the paratroopers and Che, all around the world they did sail, reaching all day on the orders of Che. He's done it before, but he went round the other way.
Conditions as severe as any faced by subsequent Whitbred sailors hit the inaugural fleet like a sledgehammer. The continuous pounding soon took its toll on Burton Cutter. Minor leaks which had plagued the boat turned into a flood. Les Williams, sharing a bottle of wine to make a filthy watch more bearable, asked Blake to investigate.
I went into the forepeak where the sails were stowed. There was 8 feet of water in the sail locker. And we found that most of the alloy frames had broken off the alloy hull skin for about 60 feet of the yacht. So the whole boat was sort of just floating. It was held together purely because it was metal. And so we pulled out of the leg to Sydney.
For the others who sailed on, a bleak southern ocean served up a frozen cocktail of frost-biting winds and icebergs. During 2 legs down in the roaring 40s, 3 men were lost at sea. Paul Waterhouse was knocked off the foredeck of Taranga by Genoa sheets during a broach and was never recovered. The co-skipper of the French ketch Trottoir Export, Dominique Guillet, was changing a headsail when a wave swept him overboard. And on Great Britain too, Bernie Hoskins' luck ran out after he went over the side for the 2nd time in the race.
He was up on the foredeck working and he fell over backwards by a simple mistake and hadn't got a safety harness on. And of course in seconds he's out of sight. You go through the normal searches, but of course in the temperature then he'd have been dead within, well, I don't know, 10-15 minutes I guess. This affected me, for years to come now. I always pinprick myself and relive the situation. If I'd done this, if we'd done that. And as I say, it's a risk sport. If you don't want to take it, fine,
Many, though, have risked and lost their lives rounding this landmark, Cape Horn at the southern tip of the Americas, where 2 great oceans meet. The weather's subject to violent mood swings, benign one moment, hostile the next. Despite the tragic loss of a crew member, Che's paratroopers were first around the Horn and into Rio. GB2 also took line honours in Portsmouth, achieving the fastest circumnavigation of 144 days. But the Whitbred Trophy awarded to the first yacht on handicap went to Sayula, a Swan 65 skippered by Mexican washing machine millionaire Ramon Carlin. A freak wave had rolled the boat over to 150 degrees, but remarkably everything held together.
Great memories from the 70s. Well, from the Whitbred sailors of the past to possibly the Whitbred sailors of the future, the Ocean Youth Club could be providing them. Well, we're on the John Lang, one of the club's yachts here at Poole Harbour in Dorset. And with me is the General Manager, Graham Worley. Graham, tell me, what are the aims of the club?
The club aims to give young people the opportunity to go to sea under sail for the purpose of fun and adventure. That's what it's all about. Although we don't profess to teach young people how to sail, they're bound to learn lots about sailing. More importantly is they learn about themselves, how they work together, making cups of tea at 7:30 in the morning at 45 degrees for 18 people is quite a challenge, actually.
Now, they look very well kitted out in the banana suits, I know you call them, that you provide. What exactly can you give them?
Yeah, you need no previous sailing experience to sail with OIC. All you need is a sleeping bag, some Wellington boots, and you must be able to swim, and then just take part. Any youngster over 12 can come sailing with OIC. The group today, they're with us today, they're going sailing for a week. They're from a school in Newbury, a down school in Newbury, and we've got some 13-year-olds up to 16-year-olds on board for this voyage this week.
Chris, you're going to take this yacht around the world, aren't you?
That's right, yes. November 1995, hopefully we'll be departing these shores and heading off for warmer climates with taking up to 150 youngsters around the world via the Panama Canal, hopefully via South Africa, and there'll be hopefully 2 boats taking part, this being one of them.
Are you brave or foolhardy?
I think it's that the world's getting a smaller place, more and more people are sailing around, and it's a fantastic opportunity for the youth of Britain to get on board a boat and to go and sail and do what they see on the telly. You know, I think that's what they want, is to have a go at it themselves.
Well, best of luck to you, Chris, and to the youngsters that you're taking around the world. Just a final word from you, Graham. It's character building, isn't it, to come and do something like this?
Yeah, we prefer to call it personal development. Young people are going to learn a lot about themselves, how they mix with other people, and if you're interested to take part this year, please get in touch.
Graham, thanks for that, and we'll give you the address a little later in the programme. But time now for our competition, and what's the prize? Well, it's a 3-day voyage for 2 with the Ocean Youth Club. But first, let's wrap up last week's quiz. And here's the lucky winner who correctly told us that Intrum is trying to catch up 14 hours on their great rival Tokyo after 4 legs of the Whitbred race. An offshore sailing jacket is on its way to you. Now this week's question. How many Whitbred 60 yachts are there in the current race fleet? Is it A9, B10, C11? Your answers please on 0891 664444. That's 0891 664444. And this week's prize is a 3-day voyage for 2 with the Ocean Youth Club. You have to be between the ages of 12 and 24 to qualify. No sailing experience is required, but you must be active. And 0891 664444 is also the number for Yachtline, which provides the latest information on the Whitbred race.
Well, let's check now on the latest leg 5 positions in the Whitbred race as the yachts head for Fort Lauderdale.
Rossfield and Yamaha are the current leaders. They've 4,092 miles to go to Fort Lauderdale. And remember, they began the leg 3.5 hours behind Intrum. A surprise in second spot, the Italians on Brooksfield took a more westerly course, and it's paying off. Then comes Laurie Smith and Intrum Justitia, disappointingly slipping to third. They've problems with their radar. 10 miles further back, the first maxi, Pierre Fellman's Merit Cup. On level pegging, the Spanish 60, Galicia Pescanova. Winston are next. Their tactic of going to the east hasn't worked. The women of Heineken are doing nicely in 7th place. No doubt they'll enjoy being in front of New Zealand Endeavour, the overall leader in the race. She's had mainsail damage and now delamination. So has La Poste, who are 7 miles further back. Hetman Sahadagni head the usual tail-enders. Odessa are 11th. And Uruguay Natural 12th with 4,307 miles to go. As for Dolphin and Tokyo, their future hangs in the balance.
And that's all for this week. We've really enjoyed our visit to Poole with the Ocean Youth Club. And if you'd like more details, then write to Ocean Youth Club, South Street, Gosport, Hampshire, PO 121EP, or call them on 0705 528 421.
In the meantime, join us next week for the latest on those troubled yachts Dolphin and Tokyo, plus, of course, news of the rest of the fleet. But for now, from both of us, goodbye.
Goodbye.
Sailing the world with IT.